Hello there! My name is Makors, and in this video I'll teach you basics of animation in BBS mode. Let's start by creating a simple film. Go to the dashboard, open Films, add a new film, create a new camera, which basically gonna define the length of the scene, and then create a new character by first opening the replay editor, and then add replay here, and then let's use this character. So yeah. I think we're ready for animating, but first I want to tell you a couple of things. Before animating, you need to learn how to work with keyframes. Keyframes can be edited in Replay Editor. Here you can see a lot of chord lines, which represent different keyframe tracks. There are different groups of keyframes, for example XYZ represents the position of the replay, pitch yaw, head yaw, body yaw, rotation, there are some states, items, the custom model variables, and so on. From X to VZ, these are exclusive to replay itself, and then anything below are tracks that represent form properties. For example, if I go and edit the form and change the visibility, I basically can edit the same property over here in the visible keyframe track. So here, if I change it, it goes invisible the same way as it was in the form. Before learning how to work with keyframes, you need to learn how keyframes work. Let's say I have here a couple of keyframes at tick 20, which is basically 1 second, and at tick 40, which is basically 2 seconds. So here I'm going to change the value over here to something like 288, and I'll have 3 points at 2 positions, so basically at 286, at 288, and at 286 again. If I'm going to play it, you will see that the character animates back and forth. The way it works, even though you have these independent frames, if you'll see in the edit track, it actually connects a line between these points, and this way it becomes an animation. Instead of having to specify every value along the line, you can just specify the key points. This is how keyframes work. Now we can learn how to work with keyframes. Hold Ctrl key and then left click to create a keyframe. You can quickly remove a keyframe by holding Ctrl key and clicking on an existing keyframe. You can select a keyframe by basically left-clicking it, and then you'll see here the editor. If you want to select multiple keyframes, you can hold Shift and then left-click on any additional keyframe that you want to select. Additionally, you can select multiple keyframes in a box by holding Shift, then clicking somewhere in the area where there is no keyframes, and then dragging it. This way you can select multiple keyframes like this. When you have multiple keyframes selected, you can drag them, you can delete them by pressing delete key, or right-clicking and remove keyframe. With multiple keyframes, you can also duplicate it by holding Alt key and then left-clicking, or you can copy and paste by right-clicking, copy keyframes, and then paste. Besides that, some keyframe tracks, which are numerical, allow you to edit track and see the values vertically. This way you can move around these values much more visually instead of changing the values over here. And the same way it can be created like this. So if I go and remove over here, and I can exit by right-clicking and then pressing exit track. Navigation in this menu can be done by holding the middle mouse button and then moving around. You can zoom in or zoom out with the mouse wheel. Then you can vertically, without using the middle mouse button, is by holding Shift and then scrolling the mouse wheel. Alternatively, you can also scale vertically by using Alt key and then scrolling the mouse wheel. This makes the keyframe tracks bigger or smaller. I think we are ready to animate our first animation, and for the sake of simplicity, I think we should animate a waving animation. It's a simple animation that should have like maybe 3 keyframes at most. The initial one, then the waving, and then another variant of waving so it would look like the character waves. Let's start with this animation. So first I'm going to create a new keyframe. There is no need to be changes because it's just gonna be the initial pose. And then somewhere around here I'm going to pose the character so that it would look like the character is waving. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna rotate the anchor at 10 degrees and gonna rotate back the leg so that it would stand on the ground. Then I'm gonna use the same rotation on the z-axis in order to make the arm raise up for the wave. And to counterbalance the weight, basically I'm gonna rotate this left arm, and I'm going also to move it down. So let's see. Yeah, it looks good. And then I'm going to create another keyframe here and rotate it a little bit into the opposite direction, just a bit, so it was 8 degrees, and maybe something like this. Let's see. And now I'm going to duplicate it a little bit, like maybe 4 times, to see how it looks like. Yeah, I think it looks like waving. Besides duplicating this way, you can also select these keyframes, then press B, and you can see now it can be duplicated. However, you see there's this offset. You have to use mouse wheel, just to scroll mouse wheel in order to set up the offset between these duplications. And so I think I need only 4. 1, 2, 3, so 4, yes. And then I can create another keyframe with the initial pose in order to go back. Let's see how it looks like. There we go. We made a simple animation. Before we'll move to the next examples, how to animate stuff, I want to share with you what these lines are. So these lines are called axes. They basically tell you how the space works for the limb or for the body part and stuff like that. As you can see, there are 3 lines. The green one, the red one, and the blue one. Red one represents the x-axis, so if I move the slider of the x, it would move along this line. The green one represents the y-axis, which is basically vertical axis. Basically, if you move the y translation, it would move up and down. And if I move the blue one, you would see that it actually moves like along this line. But the scale is the same thing. If I want to make the character bigger on this axis, you would hold Alt and then you would increase or decrease the x-axis, because it's gonna scale on this axis. If you want to increase on this axis, you would use the green one and the blue one here as well. So you can see these represent with the colors here. But for rotation it works a little bit different. Instead of rotating like along these axes or something like that, it actually looks like this. So if I want to rotate along x-axis, I would look at this one and it would actually rotate something like this. So if I go and rotate here, as you can see, the anchor was rotated along this axis but in this direction. It's more visible if I'm going to switch to local. As you can see, the red line stays on the same place. However, the green and blue lines are rotating. If I reset the transform, you would see it goes back. Same thing, if I'm gonna rotate on y-axis, it's gonna rotate something like this. And the same thing on z-axis. And cool thing about switching to local transform, for example, if I want to move the character in this direction and my character was located this way, well, I have to consciously make a decision that it's actually gonna be on z-axis. But if I had the character like this and I wanted to move the character along this axis, I will have to first move like that and then that, and it would require more effort. So what I can do instead, I can rotate the character in the direction I want, then switch to local axis and then rotate on the local axis, and you see the axis has changed, and now it actually moves along this axis. The same thing, so this is a very useful tool. This is about axis. However, there's one more thing about axis and related to rotation. As you can see, there are 2 rotation fields. There's rotate and there's rotate second. The way it works is that the first row is for the initial rotation and the second row is for the local rotation. Here is how it works. So let's say I'm gonna rotate the character a bit weirdly so that the axis on the local would appear something like this. It's not like straight up and down or left and right. It has really weird rotation and orientation. So let's say I want to rotate the character along this y-axis, like here. If I'll try to do it on the first row, you can see the character rotates incorrectly. This is what the second rotation fields are for. Now you can rotate the character on the local axis. So here, as you can see, if I rotate on Y, it actually rotates on Y-axis. If I rotate on X, it rotates on X-axis. And if I rotate on Z, it rotates on Z-axis. This is very convenient. A good example to show you is that, let's say you have the character maybe place the arm this way, and you want to rotate the arm like this way. So switch to local axis, and then voila, you can just rotate on the local axis over here with second rotation fields. So the rule of thumb is rotate on these fields, and then if you need like extra rotation on the local axis, rotate on the second row. But always do the first one, and in emergency cases use the second row. Before we'll move to the next example, I want to show you that there are 3 ways to animate the character. All of these ways have their own advantages and disadvantages, and they can be used together or separately. Here we have XYZ and the rotations of the replay itself. Then we have the transform track and the pose track. Let's start with the XYZ and rotations. Let's say I'm gonna move the character using the actor control. I'm gonna move backward a little bit, then press I to insert the keyframe and H to exit the control mode. I'm gonna remove these keyframes because they're not necessary. And let's say I'm also gonna press H here, move the character this way, insert the keyframes, and then exit the actor control mode with H. If I'll move the cursor, you can see the character is animated. The shadow is also animated here. So the benefit of using this method is that, first of all, you can move the character yourself and then insert keyframes, or you can animate these properties independent from each other. So this is a good thing, but the problem here is that it actually could like trigger the animation of the character. Then with the transform, first remove the keyframes. Transform allows you to animate using the transform field with a translation, scale, and rotate. Let's say I'm gonna create here another keyframe at 40 tick, and I'm gonna move the character backward. As you can see, when I moved, the shadow hasn't been moved. So if you will need the shadow to work correctly as well, it's the vanilla one, so with shaders is gonna be fine. The character would cast its own shadow. You'll have to animate on these tracks. However, here I can, for example, disable the shadow and it'll be fine. And now, for example, what I can do is, if I want, I can manually animate the walking cycle. Let's say I'm gonna go and I'm gonna make basically 2 poses. So one pose looks like this, and the other one, I'm gonna go zoom in, duplicate it, and then I'm just gonna flip all these x-axis rotations by pressing minus key on the keyboard while hovering on the field. So now I have, you see, one cycle. Now I can go and duplicate it with the B mode. I press B key and this way. And I think instead of the last one, I can here reset the pose. And now the character is walking manually. If I want, I can probably also move it something like this so that the reset would be more in time. Let's say while running animation, I want to make the character jump. What I can do is probably go and here create a couple of keyframes and then move this one up. Oh, this looks a bit rigid, so maybe I need more space here, maybe. Let's see. No, it doesn't look good enough. Usually you can try to change here the interpolation, which basically changes the way acceleration works. So I think first it's quadratic out, and then it's quadratic in. However, as you can see, the character was stuck there for a moment. So for this reason, it's better to do it on this track. So I'm gonna create a couple of keyframes here, and I'm gonna move the character upward, and then I'm gonna go here into the track, and for the third keyframe I'm gonna use quadratic out, and then here I'm gonna quadratic in. As you can see, the shape turned out to be like a quadratic looking curve, which is big parabola. And now the character looks more, I don't know, like it jumps more natural. Maybe if I move, it would look even more natural. That is too slow. Yeah, this is good enough. I can probably even change the vertical position. Yes, it looks pretty good. And if I want, I can also duplicate it over here, so to make another jump. And maybe even one more time. Just because why not? So yeah, these are 3 ways to animate. All of them have their own advantages and disadvantages, and you can use them together as you fit need. Let's animate a bouncing slime. The usefulness of this exercise is that we're going to reinforce the different tracks that we can use for animating, but also I'll demonstrate some animation principles. So, how we're going to do it is first I'm going to move the keyframes from the original position to tick 10, because I want to also like create here a little bit of anticipation of the animation, like the slime is gonna squish. Then at tick 50 I'm gonna move the slime where I want it to be in the end. I'm gonna insert the keyframes, and then that's how I have the animation. Yes, now it's smooth. I want to add a little bit of pause here in the middle, so what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna create 2 keyframes here. I'm gonna move them to the sides like that, and then this way moves first, and then has like a little stop here. Next, I'm going to take keyframes here, and also somewhere in between, so maybe I need to move this one tick here and 1 tick here, so that will be exactly in the middle, and then, oh, maybe even more in the middle, so let's see, 25, 43, maybe even more, and here as well. So something like that, yeah. For the jump animation, I'm gonna take these 2 keyframes, I'm gonna increase them, and for this one I'm also increasing again, because I want the first jump to be bigger than the other one. Now it looks like this. The motion itself doesn't look that good, so what we're gonna do is add here these 2 keyframes and change their interpolation to quadratic out. And for the one at the maximum, I'm going to change to quadratic in. Now it's more quadratic, and so now it looks actually like a slime jumping. And finally, we're going to use transforms in order to animate the squishiness. What I'm going to do here, because the default one at the tick 0 is going to be the default transform. And here I'm going to squish the character, so I think it's going to be 156 on this and 175, something like that, so it will squish. And then once it lands, I'm gonna duplicate here, but during the jump around here, I'm gonna reset the transform, and I'm gonna repeat the same thing here. So here jump, then here again reset, squish, then reset here, and then squish again, and then reset again. So this looks like this. Maybe like this. So it looks more or less not bad. However, I think what's gonna save this animation, it doesn't look bad, but what's gonna save this animation is for all of these keyframes that are basically squishiness. I'm gonna select all of these by pressing L key. I'm gonna change the interpolation to elastic out. Here I think and here, let's see again. squish and land. And I think it looks good, but here there's not enough space. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna probably increase the duration for duration, because basically it's too fast, but with the way elastic out works, we can kind of like, if it's 22, so it's over here, so it's about over there. Oh wait, no, it's around here, so there's not much margin. So basically I use this feature to change the duration of that one in order to kind of like make less squishiness, so it wouldn't be that fast. Let's animate Polish cow as the next example. It's a good reinforcement of using different tracks to animate, and it's easy enough as it has two variants of the same animation. Here I have a cow model from Pixgum's Vanilla Multiple Path, and a waveform that's separated in colors for left and right leg swings. So let's start by animating the jumps. So here I'm gonna create a couple of Y keyframes to simulate the jumping, so I'm gonna raise the cow a bit, and then using the same technique as with the slime in order to basically create the jump. I changed the first keyframe to quadratic out, and this other one to quadratic in. Let's see how it looks like. That looks good. Now I'm going to duplicate the same place in different places. So here, 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 so that the middle keyframe would be on the edges. So yeah. Now on the transform track, I'm going to animate the turns. So transform here. I'm gonna rotate like -14, and once I reach here, I'm gonna flip it. Let's see how it looks like. As the stop is too abrupt, I think I need to move it one tick to the right here. Yeah, now it looks more smoother. And then I'm going to copy paste it over here. But I need to flip the coordinates. Let's see. Now I can then duplicate these guys. So I'm gonna move the cursor here, duplicate, move here, let's see if it matches, and again here. Underneath these guys, let's see. Yeah, I think it looks good. Now we're gonna animate actually the poses. So I'm going to create here two keyframes representing like basically this is going in the default state. And then I'm going to animate. So first it's going to be something like, I'm gonna rotate the body on the z-axis, maybe like 15 degrees. And then I'm gonna, so this model has different axes, and instead of rotating it on z in order to rotate it back, it has y-axis, 15 and 15. I think body also has to be raised a bit, and the head raised down. So this is fine. Then I'm going to duplicate the keyframe here, and here I'm going to add the swing. So I think it has to be like maybe 30 degrees here, and here. I'm going to raise the head. Then I'm going to duplicate it over here probably, and again over here. And this one would have more swing to it, and the head is going down, so let's see. Okay, then I think I need to switch it between, because the swing doesn't look like it's actually like hitting. So I removed this one. Again, you know it. Maybe the head doesn't have to move so much. Oh. Just a bit upward. And then I'll need to repeat this animation for the other side. So first I'm going to copy the keyframe over here. Then I'm going to copy these keyframes and place it something like this same way over here. But instead now I need to switch the sides. So Oh, and it also has to be something like that. Yeah. On the other side, so I need to switch the legs. So here I'm going to rotate like that, then copy these keyframes, paste, flip, paste, and then I need to reset these guys. And then I need to repeat the same operation, so probably I can select all of these, select the here, and then I need to individually flip the, well, reset, 15, reset, 15, and then paste here. I can remove this one and then duplicate it down here. And for this one, I need to copy, paste, then negate, copy, paste, paste, then copy and paste. Let's see. Maybe they have to be moved a bit to the left, both of them. And now they can be duplicated. So let's see where is the second jump. So I need to move the cursor here, use the reference, and then duplicate it, and do the same thing again. So here, I think it has to be like around here. And let's see if it works. Something feels like it's missing. Maybe let's try change the interpolation to Hermite. What Hermite does, it basically smooths out the animation between keyframes, and let's see if it's made better. Yeah, I think now it looks better. So yeah, as you can see now, this is how we achieved the jump with the y-axis. Then we achieved the jumps with y keyframe track, then we choose the rotation with transforms, and then the actual animation of the poses between legs and stuff like that, it was achieved with poses. If we did all of that in the poses, that would be really like cluttered and would be really impossible to animate. And this way we combine different parts of the keyframes in order to make it more comfortable to work with. Let's see it again. Yeah, it doesn't look the same, but I tried. And two final features I want to showcase that will help you animate in BBS mode are Orbit Camera and Onion Skin. Let's start with the Orbit Camera. You can enable Orbit Camera by clicking this button and then Orbit. This would transport you basically to the character that you have selected. The camera would revolve basically around the character that you have selected, the replay, and then you can move the camera using WASD, shift and space for move it up and down, and the middle mouse button in order to tilt and pan the camera. If I will play an animation, you would see that the camera actually is anchored to the character. So this means that if a character is walking around or is animated, you can actually attach the camera to a specific part, and then basically if you want to change the animation, it makes it much more easier instead of having to do it from the camera perspective. For example, if I have it from the camera perspective, it would be really difficult to select all of these bones and stuff like that. So with the orbit mode, I can just, for example, move like that and then select the head the way I like. It's very easy. Alternatively, besides moving around like this, it's kind of hard to revolve around the character. So for this, there is a special mode. You can hold the key and then drag middle mouse button, then revolve around the camera. The further away you are from the anchor, the further the distance of the orbit. If I move like this, then the orbit will move also depending on the distance. Unfortunately, it only sticks to the center point of the character, which is the anchor or the root bone, so for this reason it only goes back. If you, for example, change like this, it would just track the distance from the center point instead of actually also the offset. If you want to change the Z key, you can do it in here under the flight mode and orbit hold. So if I change to X, then I can press X and hold it. So yeah, and then we have onion skin. What does onion skin does? It allows you to preview previous and next frames. So here I can increase the amount of frames, then I can also change the transparency and the color of the onion skins. So if I want to see them more opaque, I could make them less transparent and stuff like that. So this is useful if you want to see which frames it is in the future, and then you can adjust the pose. For example, it's very useful for if you want to animate the walking animation manually, and then you would see where the leg is stepping, and then you can adjust. So this is a good example. For example, here we can see that the legs here actually not the same place. What I can do here is take these keyframes and then move up to the right, something like that, and then do the same thing with the other keyframes. So here, move to the left or right, and then raise it. And now, if I disable onion skin and go back to the camera, you will see that now the leg is stationary. It's because I moved it so close that it actually stands in the same place. So this is very useful. Before that, it looked like this. You see, it's not in the same place. So redoing it, you can see now it's perfectly matches. Onion skins can be enabled either by pressing O key or enable it here. You can also enable onion skin for all of the replays in the scene. Besides that, there is also an option that allows you to change which group is used. For example, if you don't have poses, but you have like transforms, here let's say I'm gonna make a couple of transforms. So instead of, probably it's better to use it on another actor. So if I'll have here, move here, and change to the transform, the only keyframes it would actually keep track of are these two, instead of the poses. You can do it with every group that's available over here. So it is paused, now you can see it from the perspective pose. That's how onion skin works. So for the last example, I want to show you how to animate character climbing on the ladder, like this. But then I realized that it would take so much time because I spent animating it for an hour. And I think recording this clip would be just occupying a lot of space without actually showing anything interesting. I already shown you all the theory you have to use. I used onion skin in order to place the characters' limbs where they're supposed to be, and that helped a lot with making it more realistic. Then beside that, I used transform and pose independently. Everything I showed you earlier in the tutorial still applies here, just about practice and getting it right. So yeah. So that's it, the rest is up to you. From my experience, getting good at animating requires a ton of practice. Yes, you can learn some theory, like the 12 principles of animation. However, without practice, it would be useless information occupying your memory. Find references, practice, etc. This video should have given you all the tools you need to start practicing in BBS mode. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye!